we took a deliberate policy position to define how we want to use that money going forward. And we decided to learn from other countries that have found oil, but unfortunately have had what we call the Dutch disease, which is basically not using the money well, and this is a kind of resource that depletes. And so you find that even though they found oil, there was so much euphoria, nothing really happened. And juxtapose that to some of the economies that found oil and made the most use of the money. And often we cite Norway as an example. So on the basis of that work, we decided to find a three-pronged approach to the utilization of that money. We said that we needed to make sure that that money, part of it goes into our budget. About 70% of that goes into our budget. And when it goes into our budget, we should identify critical areas of intervention where the money should be used. And as a matter of fact, we gave a formula that said that a lot of the money should be used on investment. So you find that when the NPP came, there was a debate as to whether when you are spending money on free SHS from the oil sector, it is investment. So that money that we said was going to go directly into the budget, into identifiable critical areas, we refer to that as the annual budget funding amount. So the listing that I was giving you from the oil sector is that component of the oil money, which is supposed to go into the budget, that I've demonstrated how they were trying to use it in 2020. We also said that we needed to make sure that we built what we call sovereign wealth funds that will allow future generation who would have lost out on the oil fine, probably, to have something to hold on and to be able to live their lives thereafter. So we set up what we call the Heritage Fund, and a similar vehicle exists in Norway, where today they've accumulated over $800 billion. And that $800 billion, 4% of the interest that accrue on that alone is able to fund the budget of Norway. So this was the vision of the NDC under Professor Mills and under John Dramani Mahama for setting up the Heritage Fund. We knew that there will be challenges because we are not going to get enough returns initially because the amount of money that you are investing is not that much. But you need to consciously tighten your belt and grow that money so that in future, when we are borrowing at the rate at which we are borrowing, our children, if they have nothing at all, they have that Heritage Fund, to deal with our mess. Then we also anticipated that because of the cyclical nature of economic growth, and also because of the fact that oil itself is one of the most volatile commodity to have, there could be a time where our economy will be dislocated or our economy will come under some serious pressure, and we need to have buffers. We need to have some monies we have saved for a rainy day like today. So what it means is that even the NDC under Professor Mills and John Dramani Mahama foresaw today and prepared for Akuffu-Addo to deal with it. So we set up the Stabilization Fund. And at the time we set up the Stabilization Fund, we had almost $200 million in the Stabilization Fund, when in actual fact, we're only dealing with one oil field, which was the Jubilee fields. Subsequently, we have had 3 different fields, which means that our volatility level has increased, but we continue to maintain the $200 million instead of expanding to $600 million. Are you getting what I'm saying? So we were actually eating our chicken because they didn't even understand why we put up the Stabilization Fund. If they did, we would have upped the figure from one oil field of 200, second oil field to 400, and the third oil field at least to 600. So Ghana would have had a buffer of $600 million today to deal with what we anticipated, which has actually arrived. But to make sure that this money is properly utilized, we said that any time the allocation that is supposed to go into this account is more than what government wants to put there, the difference should go into one of 2 accounts or 2 separate accounts. One is what we call the sinking fund. So when it goes into the sinking fund, the law around the sinking fund, per the Public Financial Management Act, is that once the money goes there, it can only be used to pay debt or debt-related expenditures. So you use it to pay off your public debt. So you would have noticed, if you study Ghana's debt trajectory, that actually in 2015, Ghana's debt to GDP went down because we spent a lot of that money to pay off our debt. Okay? Then, part of it, if it's not going there, it should go into an account that we call the contingency fund, which has a root in our constitution. Our constitution says that the state must have an account called a contingency fund, where monies that are meant to deal with emergencies that we did not anticipate will be spent from. So when we passed the Public Financial Management Act under his leadership of John Dramani Mahama, we made sure that we gave life to that constitutional provision by providing for the contingency fund in the Public Financial Management Act in 2016. So you see, Akuffu-Addo is not sharing freebies from his own pocket. He is sharing freebies from the vision and toil of the NDC that set up a fund that accrued $200 million. The rules are that once that happens and you can define an emergency, you can indicate that that emergency was not anticipated, and 3, you did not provide for it in your budget, then you have met the conditions under which you can access that money to deal with the emergency that was anticipated. And all these 3 conditions exist with COVID-19. Are you getting the point? So he takes the money, convert it at about 1.2 billion Ghana cedis. The emergency is COVID-19, right? You don't buy 1 PPE with that money, which is COVID-19 that we are supposed to use. The emergency we are supposed to deal with is COVID-19. That 1.2 billion, not 1 cedi, is going to a hospital. Not 1 cedi is even buying swabs, what they use to take your samples. Now look at how the money is spent and see whether that is really the anticipation of COVID-19 related expenditure and what we needed to do. So he says, I'm going to spend about 40 million to provide hot meals for people in lockdown areas. I'm going to spend 40.3 million to buy dry food for people. That means you buy, maybe you give somebody 1 kilogram bag of rice, something they can cook at home. I've been saying that I never saw that dry rice or dry food being shared, but that was supposed to be given to the Ghana stock, buffer stock for them to buy that food and share. Then he says that out of that money, he's going to subsidize water. Out of that money, he's going to use part of it to pay frontline medical staff. Out of that money, he's going to use part of it to pay for exemption of taxes. Until recently that he came, he said he was going to use that money. Now he has come to collect another exemption. So the money is no more 1.2, it's about 1.48 billion. Then that same money, he says he's using part of it to give out for businesses, 600 million. So you see where he got the money from. So that money is a buffer that was created by a visionary leader. And you saw recently they wanted to deplete even the Heritage Fund. So that is how they are doing the freebies. That's why I asked Bawomia the question. The one who created the fund is incompetent. The one who used that money to buy rice for people is competent. You see, the one who created the fund is incompetent. The one who says he's giving 600 million of it to businessmen, we don't even know the character and nature of those businessmen. And we know when these people have always shared things, it has always been to bring your ID card. Is that not it? That man is not competent. So that is how they have had to deal with this matter. If you read the budget, they made a provision of about 44 million under the Ministry of Health infrastructure budget to construct 94 hospitals. And you see, Ghana, we have our own classifications and features of what a regional hospital is. So we have our primary health care, okay? Then we have how a CHIP compound should look like. It's a standard definition, the facilities that ought to be there, and the standard of care that you can get. Then we come to the polyclinics. There's a standard for it. We have already had our own drawings on how these should look like, and the costing is available. Then we have, from there, we have the district hospitals. Then from district hospitals, you go to a regional hospital. In fact, a regional hospital is not because it is in a regional capital. It is because it is a secondary health facility. So you can actually have 2-3 regional hospitals in one region. The important thing is that it is defined as regional hospital, not because of where it is located, but because of the standard of care that it is supposed to provide. That's why in Accra, you can find several of them. Then we have the tertiary hospitals after After that, you come with the tertiary hospital, which is the 37, the Kolebu, the Konfanochi, and the Tamale Teaching Hospital. Those are the tertiary, and all of them have their own classifications and definitions. Per the costings that I know, unless he wants to do a miniature polyclinic and name them district hospitals. You know, these people are not far from coming to tell you that they are spending $5 million to build a hospital. And giving all the reasons to show that the original costs were bloated. Meanwhile, they brought ones that they were constructing. This is over 34 million euros. But they'll come and convince you that the 5 million will do because they have realized that a lot of the cost is not necessary just to meet this odious promise. But this is an afterthought. We looked at the flagship programs of Akuffu-Addo. Was it a flagship? So clearly, an afterthought. Just to tell us, you know, I like the three people, me and my friend from, but you have very good ways of this. They said, no, but come up with me team code. So after the hospital, Yamutu. Yamutu. He's actually giving his 2020 election promises for 2021 and beyond. That is what he's doing. But it is already in his budget, in his manifesto. He said he will give every district. But it never featured as a flagship throughout the 3.5 years. Now 6 months, you want to do magic. That can only happen to people who lie without shame. I can tell you, NDC will never in our wildest dream look Ghanaians in the face and make this type of promise. Never. You build 90-something in 1 year. That 1 year is equivalent to how many months now? 6, 7 months? We will never do that. So that is the first point. The issue about the economy, I have explained, we need to contain the impact of COVID-19 on the economy right from now. So that after COVID-19, we have an economy that is in good shape. Even if the economy is not at the level that we want, that economy would have actually had a chance of survival. And I am a member of His Excellency John Dramani Mahamad's Economic Policy Working Group. And we already are developing, in fact, we had already finished our policy positions on Ghana, but now we have had to revise it because now COVID-19 has changed a lot of the assumptions. But critically, what this government does now will impact on how you will proceed in 2021. If they continue on the reckless path that they are going of keeping all these big, large-sized governments, still wanting to implement projects that they cannot implement just to make sure that the budget line is there to be tapped, then we'll have a very big fiscal gap. Because all the deficit that we are incurring, they are people's monies that we need to pay. And so your fiscal consolidation effort will have to take into account contractors who have not been paid, the interest on the loans that they have taken. You have to also consider the fact that some of the loans would have fallen due and you have to pay. So that will create a lot of constraint on the economy. And so we are very clear from the beginning that we need to reset our fiscal framework in 2021 under the leadership of John Dramani Mahama. And resetting the framework is to make sure that the imbalances that are occurring in our budget lines. You notice that now we are spending a lot of our money on consumption and less on infrastructure. We need to reset that base and make sure that a lot of the money goes into areas that will prepare growth, that will go into areas that will eliminate what we call our lack of competitiveness. You know, Ghana has a serious competitiveness challenge. Cost of doing business is very high. Our road network is not good for people to be able to bring in goods from outside, from the hinterland. We need to make sure that all that is resolved in order that businesses can compete appropriately with the rest of the world. And so there will be a lot of emphasis on developing infrastructure, on resetting the fiscal framework in order that we actually discriminate favorably in favor of infrastructure and to curtail the rising levels of, the rising levels of consumption expenditure that we are having. So we have a convoluted budget, as Jinapo will say, because we are spending a lot of the money on things that really don't deliver tangible benefits. We are also clear that we need to take a critical look at our monetary policy framework, and we need to assess the external vulnerabilities that are already described so that we can be able to strengthen Ghana's position with the rest of the world, and to make sure that we're able to provide enough buffers to support the city and to support the expanding forest economy that we have developed. But also to make sure that we're able to look at the real sector of the economy. So emphasis has to be paid to industry, and here industry, they have consistently used industry to confuse that. Industry is not the same as manufacturing. And you notice that manufacturing is now doing very badly, because even under Dumso, we did about 7.5% of manufacturing. They pushed it to 2017, it went up to about, I think about 9%. Now we are roaming around 4%, even without Dumso. We need to revive all of that to create opportunities for our people to find jobs. We need to look at the export economy again, and we have plans. It's just that I don't want to take the wind out of the sail of His Excellency, the President. Otherwise, we have concrete programs that we have tabled before him. And I'm sure very soon when we outdoor our manifesto, you will see our blueprint at resolving this. And we have done this before. Ghana was in similar challenges between 2014, 2015. Oil prices on the market tumbled. In fact, in 2014, 2015, within 2 months of the budget, His Excellency, the Honorable Setekwe had to come to Parliament and deliver a major policy statement, because we're already losing $700 million from oil. And at that time, we needed to do some amendment to the Petroleum Revenue Management Act in order to deal with that. And that is actually the crisis Dr. Bawomia should have been talking about. But because that crisis did not involve human lives, Ghanaians did not know that we're managing a crisis. Gold prices disappeared, cocoa prices disappeared, and our balance of payment position became very terrible. And that was the reason when we went to the IMF, one of our main focus was to get support for our balance of payment. Unfortunately, we have reversed all of that. And we believe that having dealt with this 2014, 2015, 2016 challenge, we are better placed with institutional memory to deal with that. Thank you very much.